Hello, everybody. Welcome this wonderful Wednesday evening, and thank you all for joining us for our second webinar in April, which is How Criminals Leverage Identities for Fraud and What You Can Do About It. My name is Andrew Farrell. I am Patelco's financial well-being educator, and I am so excited about this webinar this evening. This is also one of the ones that was super highly requested when we started opening up our feedback option to you guys at the beginning of our webinars this year. So we have a fantastic guest. We have a lot of really fantastic information that I'm super excited to be able to impart on all of you all today. Happy to see everyone here. It is going to be a great webinar this evening, and thank you all so much for joining. This is also our most registered webinar thus far, which I think really speaks to how much you guys want this information. And I'm again really excited to share it with all of you. So before we get into the webinar, I just want to go over a couple housekeeping things as far as how the webinar is going to run this evening. We have myself here. I'm Andrew Farrell. I will be monitoring the Q&A. And then we also have Megan, who is a community engagement specialist with Patelco. She is going to be monitoring the chat. So how we like to do it on the webinars is have questions that you guys want David to answer, put that in the Q&A. I will be on the Q&A feature and I'll be kind of sifting through those. If you just have things you want to share, experiences you want to talk about, any kind of just camaraderie among the group, use the chat for that, and just make sure that we are on hosts and, changing it from hosts and panelists to everybody on the chat feature. There is going to be a recording of this presentation sent to everybody who's registered. So if you miss anything or you just want to go back and get more of that knowledge, we will be having a recap email sent out to you next week that will have a video link for this recording. And as always, on Friday, we will be raffling 3 $25 Amazon gift cards for anybody who is joining us on our webinar this evening. So if you get an email from us Friday morning that says, Patelco Webinars, congratulations, you've won a $25 gift card, that is in fact us. It is not one of the scams that you might learn about this evening. That is actually Patelco offering you a $25 gift card. So again, Q&A for your questions. We're gonna try to save maybe about 5 or 10 minutes at the end of the presentation for a dedicated Q&A section. There is a lot of information to get through here. But we will try to designate a few minutes for Q&A, and then any other kind of chat, comments, opinions, go ahead and use the chat function for that. So I would like to now introduce our webinar and our speaker. Again, our webinar this evening is How Criminals Leverage Identities for Fraud and What You Can Do About It. So online fraud has evolved to a very highly organized ecosystem where criminals can easily purchase stolen identities, fraudulent documents, and step-by-step tutorials explaining how to bypass identity verification systems. Today, we are joined by Dr. David Maimon, who is going to explain all of this. Dr. David Maimon is the head of fraud insights at Centrelink, where he connects real-world cybercrime activity with fraud patterns seen by financial institutions. He is a longtime researcher and investigator. He has led major cybersecurity projects. He's advised great industry partners, and he directs evidence-based cybersecurity research group at Georgia State University. His work has also earned him a lot of national recognition. He's gotten awards from the National White Collar Crime Center and the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners. So we have got ourselves a real expert here in-house this evening. David, thank you so much for joining us, and please take it away.
Thank you so much, Andrew, and thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in and listening to me this evening. It's a great pleasure to be here, and hopefully we'll be able to deliver on the high expectations that we just conveyed. So today what we're going to do is we will try to explain how criminals take information that is available in different places, and we'll show where they find all this information, how they use this information in order to bypass a lot of their verification tools that a lot of financial institutions, a lot of credit unions are using. We'll show how they're doing this, and then I'll try to come up with a recommendation with respect to what we can do as an ecosystem in order to potentially try and address the on-the-spot sort of checkpoints, as we call them. So, driver licenses and passports and selfies and liveness tests. These are all very popular solutions nowadays in order to try and verify folks' identities. We'll sort of try and um, think a little bit whether these are the best solutions we can use. And then based on their recommendations, I'll show and share a few case studies which will prove the point I will try to make. And that is that as in the past, what in my mind we need to do is we need to find as many opportunities as possible to simply touch people and see with our own eyes or with the technology we have nowadays that these individuals are legitimate. These individuals are really calling us from those phone numbers, from those IP addresses. Um, we have some historical signals around them, and that will be a very important factor to have when we are trying to verify these guys or folks who are communicating with us are essentially who they are, who they say they are. But before I talk about all that, I think it's extremely important to sort of introduce myself and give you some background with respect to how I know what I know. I know that you guys are probably tuning into many webinars and podcasts out there. A lot of people talking about different issues, but at least for me, when I'm tuning into a webinar or a podcast and I don't really understand the where the speaker is coming from and their point of view and how they know what they know, it's I'm very skeptic about the content that they put out there, and so I'll try to sort of alleviate tension there, explaining to you how I know what I know. Then we'll dive into the rest of the agenda, where I'm going to show you how criminals are using identities, how they bypass existing verification, and then we'll talk about the recommendation and the case studies I just indicated. So let, without further ado, start with a brief introduction. As Andrew mentioned, my name is David. I'm a professor at Georgia State University. Um, Before that, I was a professor at the University of Maryland for 9 years. And my academic work is focused mainly on trying to understand what works and what doesn't in the context of crime prevention and mitigation, with uh, heavy focus on online fraud, obviously. I have a group of students in Georgia State, and together what we do is we simply try to make sense out of the online fraud ecosystem, understand what works and what doesn't. In addition to being a full-time professor, I'm also the head of fraud insight in Centilink. Centilink is an, an identity verification solution. And essentially, what the company does is verify the identities of millions of individuals on a daily basis in effort to prevent identity theft, in effort to prevent the issues of synthetic identities. And we're doing this on a daily basis. We pride ourselves in the fact that we're able to stop more than 60,000 identity theft on a daily basis. So in the company, I have a small team of folks who, at the end of the day, do something very similar to what I do at the university, and that is spend a lot of time in the online fraud ecosystem, both in the upstream as well as on the downstream environment. And I'll talk about what it is in just a second, in effort to make sense out of the online fraud ecosystem and answer what works and what doesn't, as well as try to come up with solutions to some of the issues that we find out there. Now, one very important thing to understand in that context is the difference between what I call upstream and downstream. When I talk about upstream environment in the context of the online fraud ecosystem, what I'm referring to is essentially the environments where the criminals spend a lot of time in. We're talking about darknet environments. We're talking about text message applications. We're talking about even clearnet environments, right? Like places like Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, where the criminals spend a lot of time uploading a lot of interesting content that they share with each other in order to perfect their operations. So what I do with my team is I spend a lot of time upstream trying to get all this information and simply bring it back home in effort to really generate more comprehensive understanding of the fraudsters, what they're trying to do, and how the tools we have downstream are really effective in protecting our customers, preventing the fraudsters from being successful in whatever they're trying to do. Now, when we talk about upstream, there are a couple of key environments that is important for me to mention. The first is darknet. Um, for those who are not familiar or have never been in darknet, darknet is a an internet like the internet that we're familiar with. The only difference between the internet that we're familiar with and the darknet is the browser that allows us access to it, as well as the level of anonymity that is maintained on the darknet. On the darknet, if you use the darknet, you're using the Tor browser, which each and every one of you can download freely to their computers. And once you have the URL, which will probably most often time will be gibberish letters with the dot onion sort of URL, you'll be able to surf the darknet and pretty much access all types of websites, legitimate and illegitimate, that are available out there. When people talk about the darknet, usually they talk about bad sort of criminal websites, like the website you're seeing on the screen right now. What you're seeing on the screen right now is essentially a darknet market which offered for sale identities and bank accounts. It offers for sale stolen credit card information and stolen checks. But in addition to these kind of markets, there are a lot of legitimate websites on the darknet. You can, for example, connect to Facebook over the darknet. You can listen to the radio. You can even read the Bible over the darknet. The only difference between the darknet and the clearnet is, again, is the level of anonymity that the users maintain. And because the level of anonymity you maintain on the darknet is fairly high, criminals really like that ecosystem and sort of open shops and markets on that ecosystem. So what you're seeing again on the screen right now is a typical layout of a darknet market. If you clicked on one of the ads here, you would be transferred to a page which will give you detail about the type of commodity that you wanted to that you're interested in. So in the example we have here, we have an example of a credit union bank account which is offered for sale. This is a drop account, which essentially is a newly created account, which the vendor is offered for sale for $250. One of the interesting things that you can see on the screen as well is that this specific vendor has a refund policy. So, if you don't like the product and the product didn't really didn't really work for you, you can sort of negotiate a refund. Many of the websites will also have opportunity to provide with feedback with respect to how the vendors did and how the product performed, like in any other legitimate online market that most of us are using out there. So, this is a typical ad on the one of these darknet market. This is another typical ad on another darknet market out there. On this specific ad, folks are offering for sale fake social security card, fake driver licenses, and as you guys can see on your for yourself, we have a lot of information available out there. All you have to do is simply click purchase, and then you will get the commodity to your computer. So this is darknet. Another really important platform that folks spend a lot of time in nowadays, unfortunately, are text message applications. So 2018, we started to see a lot of criminals shifting gears from darknet to message applications. Uh, Text message applications are um, extremely useful for the criminals simply because they allow you to maintain a high level of anonymity like the darknet, but they're faster, sort of speaking. And so what criminals are doing nowadays is they open group chats on text message applications such as Telegram and WhatsApp and Signal and QQ and ICQ and Potato and so many others. They invite all their friends to be on those groups. They invite potential customers to be on those groups as well. And then they simply offer for sale all kind of illicit commodities. The illicit commodities could be drugs. The illicit commodities could be weapons. They could be counterfeit product. And the markets that I spend a lot of time sitting in are fraud markets. Markets which support the sales of illicit commodities that at the end of the day will facilitate fraud. So as you guys can see on the video, a lot of fake driver licenses on those markets. We're seeing a lot of stolen debit cards, stolen credit cards, We're seeing a lot of identities. We're seeing a lot of compromised bank accounts. These are all commodities that we're seeing on a daily basis on some of the text message applications and that criminals are offering for sale. And the last important platform that I would like to mention in that sense is social media, the popular social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. All those platforms, unfortunately, at this point, support criminals' operation. Criminals feel comfortable to share all kind of information on those platforms, and so there's a lot going on those platforms as well. And so in terms of commodities as well as tutorials, which supports criminals' engagement in fraud. And so what I do with my teams and what I've been doing with my team during the last 7 years or so uh, is download all this information to our computers, bringing it back home, bringing all the conversation, all the commodities that I just showed you available on the darknet, Facebook, text message application, and simply try to make sense out of it in the context of identity fraud. Okay. And so when we talk about identity fraud, and this is a good time for us to make sure we're all on the same page with respect to key terms, we need to differentiate between three key terms: identity theft, synthetic fraud, and business fraud, business entity fraud. When we talk about identity theft, we are talking about essentially someone taking someone else's name, date of birth, and social security number and using this combination illegitimately to either onboard with a bank, um, file taxes, and simply use the identity in an illegitimate purpose. When we talk about synthetic fraud or synthetic identities, we're talking about a combination that could be a combination of name, date of birth, and social security number, which could potentially not exist, like completely fake, or real name and date of birth merged with either stolen or completely bogus social security number. That is what we mean by synthetic identities and synthetic fraud. And when we talk about business entity fraud, we're essentially talking about bogus businesses or dormant businesses which someone reinstated, the fraudsters reinstated, and they're now using it in order to engage in fraud. So to make long story short, my teams and I, both at the university and the company, we download all the information to our computers, and then we simply try to make sense out of this in the context of these three important um, identity fraud concepts that I just talked to you about. Now, let's now talk about how criminals take all this data from the online fraud ecosystem in order to advance identity fraud. Well, at this point, as I assume many of you know, there's an illicit supply chain that takes place in both the ClearNet, darknet, as well as in text message application, an illicit supply chain that support um, criminals who engage in stealing our identities and manufacturing synthetic identities. We're talking about suppliers, we're talking about producers, we're talking about distributors and consumers, all existing at the same ecosystem, trying to facilitate fraud. When we talk about suppliers, you usually talk about folks who put together data dumps for other people to use. And what we're showing on the screen right now is the traditional structure of a data dump that criminals put out there in order for other criminals to start using in the context of their operations. The traditional structure includes information on victims' name, date of birth, social security number, addresses. Having said that, the more recent dump or the most recent structure of a data dump follows what you guys are seeing on the screen. In addition to name, date of birth, social security number, and address, the criminals now provide also fake driver licenses and images of individuals that essentially could go along with the identities, either the real individuals or completely bogus individuals that you can sort of work with. And so, what if you click on some of the profiles in the data dumps I just showed, you'll be able to obtain the name, address, social security number, driver license, and an image of a person identifying themselves for $12, right? That's essentially what we're looking for. We're looking at each identity, which includes all this information, which goes up for sale for $12. Unfortunately, if you decide to buy in bulk, if you decide to buy more than 100 identities at the same time, you will get a very good price and you will be able to get each identity for $8 only. Once you have these identities, you can start working with them. And what folks essentially do with them is the first thing is they try to sort of establish a phone, create a phone line. And so they go to many of those um, um, telecommunication companies, shops, and they use the identities in order to purchase a slew of telephones and connect them, of course, to telephone lines. And once they have that, they take the phone and the identity and they try to create drop bank accounts. When we talk about drop bank accounts, we're talking about um, bank accounts they create in order for them to be able to funnel the money from the fraud proceeds, may it be stolen check or other types of fraud proceeds, which essentially will go to those specific drop bank accounts. Once you have a drop account and a phone, you can facilitate more fraud, and you can engage in fraud against the government. You can file for someone taxes. You can use the identity in order for um, engaging in unemployment benefit fraud. You simply have all the commodities and all the information you need. You have the name, date of birth, social security number. You have the driver licenses. You have the picture of the person. All you have to do is just go to the government website, which offers the services for that specific identity, and apply for unemployment benefit. You can also use many of the identities to engage in tax refund fraud, and there are a lot of, unfortunately, tax refund fraud packages available on the platform we oversee. What we're seeing on the screen right now is an example for such a package. You'll be able to get someone's social security number, date of birth, driver license, and W-2s, and simply start working with that and submit a tax refund application on behalf of that individuals. And if you don't know how to do that, the ecosystem will provide you with tutorials. You can, at this point, purchase tutorials for engaging in tax refund fraud. For $250, you can download a PDF, which will essentially walk you through the process of engaging in tax refund fraud. And to be honest, to engage in any type of identity theft that your heart desire. This is a lot to be said about stolen identities and how the identities are being used to facilitate fraud. In that sense, synthetic identities, as we indicated earlier, are also very important because they help facilitate fraud as well, using either completely bogus identities or identities of individuals who are trying to disguise their bad credit score, right? I mean, a lot of people out there have a bad credit score and they won't be able to get into a new apartment. They won't be able to lease a new car. And so what they're trying to do is they're trying to get a synthetic identity, switch their social security number in order to wash away their bad credit and get a good credit score. There are a lot of websites out there which offers solution which could support that, but also websites which will allow you to purchase a completely bogus synthetic identity for you to use. This is an example for that. You see for yourself the high credit score that comes along with this specific identity of a female at the age of 29, which is available for sale for $250. So quite reasonable. We are seeing at this point a lot of people using those synthetic identities to get into new apartments and connect the apartments to utility bills and then take loans and then open accounts with credit unions, right? I mean, an example that we're seeing here on the screen right now is from a guy I can't remember where exactly this guy was, but the guy posted on Facebook the fact that he used a CPN, he used a social security, like a fake social security number, in order to get access to a new apartment that he really wanted to get into. This guy, this vendor, Armani McNulty, essentially helped them with a synthetic identity, and with the identity, he was able to get into the apartment. I can tell you that based on the databases that we have access to, the day after the guy posted the post on Facebook. This is September 19, 2024. We've seen evidence of the guy trying to connect the new apartment to a utility company. So we definitely see the criminals using the stolen identities in their attempt to create bank accounts, establish communication lines, getting into new apartment, but at the same time use synthetic identities to do the same. And so, in order to counter all that, there are a lot of solutions, a lot of identity verification solutions, which supposedly supposed to catch a lot of them. And in that sense, it's really important to understand the identity verification journey. When you try to onboard with a credit union or a bank or even with the government, the organization and the security solution or the verification solution will walk you through a journey which will include you uploading your PII, your personal identifier, then submitting some documents, driver licenses, passports, utility bills. They will ask you to take a photo of yourself along with a driver license or a passport. And then some companies and organization will ask you to prove who you are by providing a liveness test or passing a liveness test, which will essentially mean that you will need to be on the screen with someone who will talk to you live. Um, Followed by all that, there will be a decision with respect to whether the organization will decide to onboard you or not. And so there are a lot of solutions which will help organizations to walk you through the verification journey. A lot of document verification companies and photo verification, you have voice verification company and liveness checks companies. But unfortunately, at this point, we know, especially with AI being so prevalent, criminals found ways to bypass many of those solutions. And so, in the context of document verification, for example, we're seeing a lot of evidence of criminals being able to produce and purchase from the online fraud ecosystem we just talked about high quality documents, which will allow them to onboard with any institution out there. The documents are printed on the right pieces of paper with the right pieces of hardware. In addition to those documents, we are able to find a lot of vendors out there who will manufacture very high quality driver licenses with all the securities and watermarks on them, which essentially many of the solutions out there will be looking for in order to prove their authenticity. We're seeing the driver licenses being printed on the right material, on the right cards, with the holograms, with the stickers. Everything is available out there for sale in the online fraud ecosystem and for reasonable prices. As you guys can see on the left side of the screen, these are some of the prices for high quality driver licenses. You can get a good driver license, a good enough driver license printed on a PVC card for as low as $130. So the criminals have found a way to sort of bypass a lot of the document verification solutions out there. Photo verification is also very popular. So at the end of the day, what photo verification solution will ask you to do is to take a selfie of yourself with a document proving that you are who you say you are. But unfortunately, there are many vendors on the online fraud ecosystem who will help you indoctor or doctor those images. What we're seeing on the screen right now is one of the vendor showing how they took a picture, an image, a passport picture of several individuals, and then simply added in passports, driver licenses, and other cards that those individuals are now holding. And it's fairly easy to do that with Photoshop and other software that is out there. Another very common solution is voice verification, but with AI, many criminals now found way to clone our voices and simply use it when they bypass those solutions. So let me just play this video and show you how the criminals are using Gerard Butler voice with a online romance victims before and after in this video.
Hi there. I'm rarely compelled to do this, but Michael Nyquist, hey, my lovely queen, I love you so much. I want to ask you to borrow me some loans of $5,000, and I promise to pay you back the next week. I will be forever grateful that you brought.
So voice verifications, are common and fairly easy to pull at this point with some of the AI tools. Liveness checks are also quite common. And when we talk about liveness checks, again, we're talking about organization asking you to be on video with them, right? And showing yourself with a driver license, turning your head left, right, up, down, and sometimes even having a conversation with the organization. Unfortunately, there are many tools out there which allow you to bypass verification as well. These are some of the tools that criminals are using nowadays. And I'm not going to go into details of exactly how they do that, but to be honest, it's fairly simple. There's a software which is called OBS Studio, which again, everyone can download freely to their computer. Once you have it, you can download an emulator for a phone. And then once you have an emulator, you can simply inject the video or the picture that you're trying to sort of verify directly to the computer camera. That will hijack sort of the camera and what the camera is trying to present in real life, and will show the video as it was the real life video, so to speak. And that's what the criminals are doing nowadays in order to bypass verification. And that's what we're seeing on the videos that I'm showing right now. We're seeing several videos where the criminals are using this technology in order to bypass the liveness test solutions. Unfortunately, a lot of fraudsters out there are actually naming the specific security solution and identity verification solution they can bypass. And this is, again, one post from the online fraud ecosystem, which shows that, demonstrate the quality of the video that the criminals are working with. The last important thing that I would mention is the ability of fraudsters to bypass two-factor authentication. A lot of talks about know your customers, and the fact that two-factor authentications potentially will be able to prevent some of it happening. Unfortunately, we're in a point where even two-factor authentication is not good enough. The video that I will show you in just a second will show you how easy it is to use a bot which is hosted on Telegram to simply place a call to a target, and then with the click of a button to simply ask someone to provide their OTP, their one-time passport, or the two-factor authentication to the criminal in order for them to sort of log in to the victim bank account. Let me just play a few seconds out of this video just to show you how it sounds. So the U phone is the criminal phone, and the criminal is placing a call to the target. We hear the phone ringing, hopefully. Now let's hear the conversation.
John Smith, this is the PayPal fraud prevention line. We have sent this automated call because of an attempt to change the password on your PayPal account. If this was not you, please press 1. To verify your identity, please enter the 6-digit security code that we have sent to your mobile device.
So as you guys can see, the tool automatically asks from the target any type of information. And what's interesting, and it goes on and on. We simply don't have time, so I just want to go quickly through it. As you guys can see on the bottom left side of the U phone, you see that with the click of a button, you can ask someone to provide their CVV, their social security number, their one-time password, which is a two-factor authentication. And once the victim essentially type it, you will get it on the telephone screen in a moment of seconds. So, at this point, unfortunately, we've seen that criminals are able to bypass many of the security solutions we have right now, which essentially is supposed to help us prevent someone stealing our identities or using synthetic identities. And so the question is, what could be done? What can we do about this issue? In my mind, and in my training, like a long time ago, when I was in PhD, in the PhD program in Ohio State, the sociology program, we learned that one thing that is very, very different, that is very, very difficult to fake, and that is history. You can maybe change it a little bit, but very difficult to change to fake it. And so many of the solutions that I just showed you that we're currently using, the document verification, the photo verification, the selfie verification, the one-time password, these are all solutions that are on the spot solution. Um, in my mind, a more effective solution will be a solution that takes into consideration historical signals around an individual telephone, an individual IP address, an individual sort of place of residence along long period of time when they're trying to onboard with banks, governmental agencies, credit unions, and so on. So if we can find a way to touch a person or to know how many people how many times these specific individuals have been touched during the last, I don't know, 10 years or so, and get some signals around that and see whether that individual is really calling us from the same telephone number they called another bank 5 years ago, it will help us reassure the tension with respect to the potential risk around that specific individual. And so, in my mind, agencies need to start leverage these historical signals, find ways to obtain those signals and then leverage them in the context of the verification, folks' verification when they try to open a new bank account, credit union account, governmental agency account, and so on and so forth. And that is, to me, where most of the job, most of the verification should take place. When we sort of provide our PIIs, our personal identifiers, name, date of birth, social security number, address, uh, our telephone numbers, our IP addresses. These signals on their own, if we have enough historical evidence which will tell us where this specific individuals has been during the last, I don't know, 10 years or so, should be sufficient enough for us to have some thoughts around the potential risk that this individual really exists, in the case of whether we're trying to figure out whether we're dealing with synthetic identity or not, whether this individual is stealing someone else's identity in the context of stolen identity, or whether this individual is really the individual who is trying to onboard with us. And so let me just demonstrate to you, how it looks like in practice and start with some of the cases that we've seen earlier. So, earlier I showed you this driver license that I was able to find with my team a couple of years ago. That was during COVID time. The criminals in this specific case have used the identity of the person and on the slide to try and claim unemployment benefits from the state of Utah. And they've done it successfully. The problem, again, with the state of Utah was that they didn't have historical signals, which essentially suggested that the individual who is using Ben identity is not really Ben. If you have such historical signals, and unfortunately, I have access to some databases that allow you to do that. You'll be able to see that normally Ben, the specific individual uh, in the slide that we're showing here, is not really using the name Ben when they're trying to apply for a new bank account or they're trying to apply to a new telephone line. They're using a completely different name for that purpose. Um, you're also seeing, if you start investigating the phone number and you start investigating the email addresses that the individual that applied on behalf of Ben for unemployment benefit, you will see that something is fishy. Because these individuals are not using the same phone number, they're not using the same email address that this specific target has been using during the last couple of years or so. And so when that happens, that is a very strong signal and strong reason to believe that you are dealing with someone who's trying to steal someone else's identity. Okay, so this is one case which essentially help us prove this issue. Another interesting case will be, in the context of my case. I mean, I've been doing this type of work for the last um, 16 years now, and in 2022, I'm sorry, after I started talking about the issue of check fraud here in the United States, I got some bad guys reaching out to me, threatening to steal my identity and mess with my credit score. And I actually did do that in 2022. But then there was a period of time when things sort of calmed down. Um, And in 2025, like in June 2025, I realized I got a letter in the mail to my home where I was told, right, that a request I submitted with Lifeline Support Center has been denied because I haven't really uh, submitted all the documents that Lifeline Support Center essentially requested me, and I haven't done that. So that was another very strong signal that someone is stealing my identity. And so, if you looked at that specific application, you would see that someone had used a completely different address, a completely different phone number, and a completely different email address than the one that I usually do when I try to onboard with banks, when I try to onboard with credit card, when I try to onboard with any other institution out there. And so again, if the information does not, if the historical signals do not match, that's a strong signal suggesting that you are dealing with someone who's trying to steal someone else's identity. And in the context of the databases I have access to, I was actually able to track that specific individual who did that in that specific case, simply because the telephone number that the individual used led to that specific individual. I mean, it's fairly easy and not too complicated to figure that out. Another very important case that I would like to sort of talk to you about, which essentially emphasize this point, which historical evidence and historical signals are very powerful when we're trying to verify identities in the context of business takeover and folks stealing business identities in order to steal their checks, in order to steal their resources. Um, as I showed earlier, in addition to individual identities and individual fools, there are a lot of business fools out there. These are essentially complete business identities with employment identification numbers, with a complete set of information of the owners of the individual, of the owner of the businesses. And this information is available for sale out there, and the criminals are using it. They're using it in order to try and steal business identities. Once they steal the business identities, they try to create bank accounts for those for those businesses, and then either transfer money to those accounts, run away with it, or steal some of the checks that the legitimate business are getting to their addresses, and deposit them in the bank accounts, the newly created bank accounts that the fraudsters have put together. Um, One of the best case studies I have on this one comes from these two checks that you guys are seeing on the screen right now. These two checks I was able to find in 2023 on one of the online fraud markets that we overseen. You see the high balance on those checks. Each check is the balance on it is larger than $200,000. Because the balance was so high, I decided to reach out to the business owner and let him know that this is happening. And once I've done that, the business owner has asked me to look for three more checks he was missing. So in total they were missing five checks. I was able to find one more check. Um, couldn't find the other two. Sent it over to the business owner, and then the day after, the business owner called me and essentially shared with me what happened. What happened was that the criminals took the business identity and took the business owner identity. They created a completely new business with the same name, the same business name, just adding an S at the end of the legitimate business name. Filed all the paperwork with all the state agencies to look like this business is legit, and then open a bank account for that specific business using the same name, just adding an S at the end of the business name, and then depositing five checks amounting to $2 million in the business accounts, and then running away with that. So when I started looking into the historical signal around that, it was fairly easy and um, fairly easy to essentially find the breadcrumbs that the criminals have left behind. Because when you look at open corporate, you definitely are able to see when the original company was established, But then once you take the same business name, add an S in it, type it in open corporate, you see the date where the new company had been created. Then when you looked at some of the databases that we have access to, you're actually finding evidence that the owner of the business identity was stolen in an attempt to create a new telephone line right around the time that we were able to find the checks. You see, February 2023. So again, the criminals were using the owner identity with some addresses that were no longer relevant to the business owner, and that's how they essentially created a new bank account and deposited the stolen checks in those newly created bank accounts. The last case I want to share with you, which in my mind, again, demonstrate the value of historical evidence, is a recent case that the Department of Justice released out there. A case that speaks volume to North Korea efforts to, um, you know, funnel money from the U.S. to to North Korea in order to sponsor and fund their nuclear program. Essentially, what the North Korean did in this case was they found someone here in the United States to apply for a job, to steal identities and create synthetic identities and apply for jobs with Fortune 500 companies here in the United States. Once the jobs or the candidates were able to obtain the jobs, the specific individuals here in the United States received computers from those companies, and then the North Korean logged into the computers from afar in order to perform the job, right, of the individuals that were signed up to work for those Fortune 500 companies. One of those individuals who did that, there are a couple of cases that the Department of Justice have been prosecuting during the last year or so. Her name was Christina Chapman. She was in Arizona, and she was working on behalf of the North Koreans to steal those identities, create those farms. As you guys can see, this is the laptop farm that Christina Chapman created in order to allow the North Korean with access to the computers work on behalf of the stolen identities and then getting paid back home, right? And then send the money to North Korea. If you look at some of the historical evidence that around Christina Chapman, you'll be able to see quite quickly that when she signed up few of those employees with an HR company, she was using her own address, as you guys can see on the bottom of the screen right now, right? So, but when you look at this address in databases that we have access to, like historical databases that we have access to, you're able to see quite quickly that this address has been used along with other individual addresses, right? Even though that this is not an apartment building, and this was not supposed to be used in that case. So another very strong case that suggests that once you have historical signal around an identity, it's easier to flag the issue, and it's easier to sort of raise red flags around the use of an identity in an illegitimate manner. And so, we have 1 minute left to my portion before we open the floor to questions. We are seeing fraudsters very actively looking for our identities in the online fraud ecosystem. I showed you the type of identities they're looking for. I showed you the data dumps that the fraudsters are working with. I showed you that the fraudsters at this point are able to bypass a lot of the security solutions and a lot of the verification solutions that we put out there. And so, at least to me, the answer lies with the historical signals. Yes, maybe you still need to have further down the verification tunnels, solutions such as liveness test and document verification and the selfies and the photo verification. But the core solution in my mind should be focusing on the historical evidence around individuals and around potential signal that someone is potentially using their identity in illegitimate manner. And so, with that in mind, I'm more than happy to open the floor and take questions. And Andrew, hopefully we're doing good on time there.
Yes, we were doing great on time. Thank you, David. Also, I didn't know you went to Ohio State. That's really cool. I grew
Yeah,
up in Ohio. Yeah, I went to Wright State, but I would go to OSU a lot when I had friends in that area. So small world.
awesome.
Um, so the first question that popped in, Eddie asked earlier about your input on signing up for credit lock services and credit monitoring services, kind of what your thought, if it's worthwhile or not, how those work. And then he mentioned that some offer identity theft reimbursement guarantee. So if you're able to explain a little bit about what that means.
Yeah, 100%. So I think it's a good idea to have the credit locks. I froze all my credit lines with the three credit bureaus. Um, One important thing to understand is that if you freeze your credit lines, you freeze your credit, that essentially means no one can take loans under your name. Having said that, they can still open bank accounts under your name. And so, in order to take care of that, you do need to have some kind of an identity theft solution. There are several solutions out there. LifeLock is one of them. They have, different programs. So, I can tell you that some of those solutions are really effective. None of them is bulletproof. None of them essentially will prevent from the account to be open, sort of speaking. That's on you to sort of discover, but at least it will have a signal, like a red flag around this issue. The other important thing that I would like to mention here, and I think it's important for our listeners to be aware of, is the fact that um, if someone open a bank account under your name and you don't have this identity theft protection plan, which potentially will flag that issue, what you should be doing is you should go to checks system or early warning. These are two companies, two solutions. They're type of consumer bureaus, which essentially have the list of all the bank accounts each and every one of us here in the United States have under our name. You, as a consumer, is entitled to have a full annual report from those consumer agencies. And I think it's important for folks to be aware of that because you can ask for this report and simply detect if someone has opened a bank account without you knowing about this. Andrew, hopefully that answered the question. I mean, as much as I can.
Very much so. Yeah, we actually had another question pop up in the Q&A before you started answering that one that was very similar, kind of asking about your opinion on locking your social security number using the government's social security self-lock program, which I think you just answered there. So I appreciate that. Those were the main questions that popped up in our Q&A. We do have a couple minutes left. So if anybody does have any other questions that you would like to ask David, you can pop them either in the chat or in the Q&A. I can see both those right now. So if anyone has any last minute questions, go ahead and just drop those right now. Otherwise, I do want to, if anyone's typing anything, just kind of let everyone know about we have our May webinars coming up, and we actually have a guest for both those webinars as well. So we are going to be joined by Nadia Vanderhall. She is a financial educator as well. One of the other big things that people have been requesting as far as webinars go is information about investments and kind of how to invest in various stages of your life. And that is a very big topic. So we have actually broken it up into a part one and a part two. So our first one in May is going to be kind of understanding your risk tolerance, understanding your current money landscape. And then part two, the second webinar in May, is going to be all about investment products and annuities and kind of the different terminology and language like that in plain language terms. So keep your eye out for that email coming up soon. We have a few more that have just popped in the chat. Let's see. I guess the first main question a couple people asked is, how do you go about locking your social security number? What is the process of actually getting that done?
So again, I mean, I'm not as familiar with that process. I mean, I haven't really done that myself, so
Okay.
I won't be able to talk about it, unfortunately. I mean, I'm talking about locking your credit scores, and your credit lines. That's the things that matter the most.
Okay. Um, let's see. Someone was asking, do you recommend doing? I know you talked a little bit about like the voice cloning and how that's sometimes easy to kind of get around these days.
Yeah.
Do you recommend doing voice identity with your financial institution, or do you think that's kind of something we've moved past now?
I mean, there are solutions, and I showed that there are a couple of solutions out there that the criminal that many like several organizations are using, but you can easily clone someone's voice. And I was actually in a conference last week, and one of the things we've done, right, me and the other presenter was, we went on stage, and I was on stage along with my colleague. My colleague got a phone call from me, right, when I was on stage, right? I mean, it's and we were able to do it live, and my colleague on stage was talking to me, right, on the phone, and I
Mhm.
was answering all the questions without even talking, right? I mean, so at this point, I don't think that it's really great. Like, I mean, if you want
Sure.
to do it, you can do it, but I don't think that you'll be able to bulletproof someone
Yeah,
taking over your account with if you provide your voice.
it's not as great of a safeguard as it once was.
No.
Um, Another member just dropped in the chat. What are your thoughts on security keys to access your accounts versus passwords? So, like the keychains and things like that. How does that work, and what are your opinions on that?
So everything is hackable, right? I mean, and we all know that, right? I mean, all these solutions, they have their pros and cons. I mean, with the keys, I mean, if someone get your keys, then it get access to the entire list of passwords you have, right? So
Mhm.
you have to keep that in mind as well.
Sure. Are you familiar with ID.me?
Yeah.
I think it's a how reliable is ID.me? A member wants to know.
I mean, ID.me is a company, is one of the companies that in a way we work with, we compete with. I won't be able to sort of talk on their behalf or against
Gotcha.
them because yeah.
Let's see what popped up here. Renewing passports online or renewing like sensitive documents like that online. Is that something that you recommend, or you think that's something that's not
I
so much
think
safe?
it's I think renewing online is perfectly fine as long as you go to the actual website, right? That you
Yes.
need to go to. So make
Yes.
sure that you stay away from phishing. That's in that sense.
All right. And then this last one popped up. This might be something we've talked about. Let me read it here. Ooh, where'd it go? Oh no, hold on. So sorry. I scrolled too much and then the whole thing went away. How does one opt out of voice biometrics when calling one's financial institution, or cancel it after it's been set up? So if you have opted into that, is there a way to opt out, or is it kind of a situation where once your voice is out there, it's out there?
Each organization have their own terms of use, sort of speaking. So you're gonna have to call to the organization you
Okay.
provided your voice with, and then they will let you know what you need to do.
All right. Perfect. Let's see. I think that sums up most of the questions that we had here. Um, someone, if you get hacked, is there any reason why you wouldn't get a new social security number if it got hacked? Do you always get a new one generated?
I mean, think about it in the context of data breaches here in the United States. Like all our identities are out there. You're not going to get a new social security number if you got hacked. It's simply not going to happen. The circumstances under which the government will issue a new social security number are very extreme. So the only thing you need to do is you need to make sure that you're vigilant, freeze your credit score, identity theft protection plan, and simply be on the lookout.
Okay, beautiful. David, thank you so much for your time. It looks like we are right about time right now. So anyone who has any last minute questions, if we were not able to get those answered, I will drop David's email one more time in the chat right here. And I think, oops, let me, uh, all right. So we dropped your email in there. Any last minute questions, go ahead and just reach out to David directly, david.maimon@centilink.com, and he can get any of those longer form questions answered for you all. David, thank you so much for spending your Wednesday evening with us. To our members who have joined us, we appreciate you spending your evening as well. We are going to have a short survey pop up when this webinar is done. It's the same questions that we ask you at the end of every survey. Just give us a quick little overview of how we did. Any ideas that you have for future webinar topics, we would be very, very greatly appreciative of your feedback. That will pop up as soon as we end this. It just takes about a minute or so to fill it out. So if you would not mind giving us a minute to do that, we would appreciate it quite a bit. David, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Really appreciate your time. And that is all we have for you all. Thank you for your Wednesday evening, and you guys enjoy the rest of your night. Hey, you guys, hope you liked that video. Thank you for watching. For more financial wellness information, go ahead and click here to subscribe and here to watch the next video. Thank you.